nature. Your body, your eyes, your breathing, and everything you are is a product of the very nature I'm telling you to go back to, or suggesting that you go back to. In other words, what am I really saying is that you go back to yourself. Going back to the self is to go back to nature. Going back to nature is to go back to the self. You can argue forever against this, as many have done, and it will not come out right. You will lose every time. Because your very action, the very fact of sweating, the very act, go and research what it means to sweat when you're overheated and compare that to a car, any overheated machine, and compare the miracle. I'm not even talking about the miracle of blood, the miracle of the eye, the miracle of menstruation, the miracle of giving birth to a child. Let's even leave that out. The replication of cells. The very act of sweating will teach you that something's going on. It's unbelievable. Or that, as people have said, that even life is even on this planet, the statistic, the probability of that, the intelligent life being on this planet, is so astronomically impossible that it must have a cause. And in my other work I get into that deeper stuff, right? But we just need to keep it very simple. In going back to the self, it implies unison with nature. So you can do it the other way if you feel like it. You can go to nature, but you must go with that blank mind. As Bruce Lee said, every day when I awake, like a student at his first class, I prepare a blank slate for the day to write upon. More profound words I can't think, but very hard. But you are the teacher. It's hard, but you're the teacher, not somebody else, and you're the student. You've immediately made yourself teacher and pupil, and brought back your sovereignty from that point. So when you go with that blank mind, she will do all the writing that is necessary. The very word neter, nature, came from the word in Egypt meaning gods, the goddess, the higher power, that which is eternal. Friedrich Schelling, the great German philosopher, idealist, he said that nature is visible spirit, spirit is invisible nature. Erich Fromm uses the term necrophilia, as we said. His counterpoint to that was biophilia, love of life. Biophilia is the passionate love of life and all that is alive. It is the wish for further growth. It is the wish to further growth, whether in a person, a plant, an idea, or a social group. The biophilious person wants to be more rather than to have more. Alan Watts, in his book, it's actually called The Book on the Taboo of Knowing Who You Are. He says, the prevalent sensation of oneself as a separate ego enclosed in a bag of skin is a hallucination which accords neither with Western science nor with experimental philosophy, religions of the East. This hallucination underlies the misuse of technology for the violent subjugation of man's natural environment and consequently its eventual destruction. Actually, it's our destruction. Nature isn't going anywhere. Lack of knowledge about the evolution of the organic from the inorganic, coupled with misleading myths about life coming into this world from somewhere else, has made it difficult for us to see that the biosphere arises or goes with a certain degree of geological and astronomical evolution. As Douglas E. Harding has pointed out, we tend to think of this planet as a life-infested rock, which is as absurd as thinking that the body is a cell-infested skeleton. Surely all forms of life, including man, must be understood as symptoms of the Earth, the solar system, and the galaxy, in which case we cannot escape the conclusion that the galaxy is intelligent. But we have escaped it. It's dumb, we're smart. He says, in short, he says, we do not come into this world, we come out of it as leaves from a tree, as the ocean waves, the universe peoples. Right? The wave comes from the ocean, the people come from the universe. How could it ever have been anything else? Werner Heisenberg, the quantum scientist, puts it in language I think is very, very brilliant. Simple but brilliant. He says, look, what we observe is not nature itself, but nature exposed to our method of understanding. So this is just even the first point. We don't observe nature as it is. And he's even talking about himself, all these quantum scientists. Because he was digging into what the problem is. How can they crack this code of why, why the realities on the micro level are so unbelievably different on the macro level? They should be the same. One should be confirming the other. In other words, to paraphrase what they say, the quantum scientists, the deeper and deeper we go into matter, the more it looks like mind. 3 fucking cheers. That has been said by, do you know how many mystics have died horrible deaths saying that? And now they're going to take the credit for it? But nobody has put the matter better than the great protege of Gerald Massey, Alvin Boyd Kuhn, the American scholar. And way of seeing, as we said, is one of the major themes of this talk. He says, look, the real Maya, remember that's the Vedic word for, oh, we're all in the realm of the Maya, we're all in the realm of karma, right? Well, he knocks that on the head. He says, look, the real Maya or illusion is not the natural forms, but the mind's propensity to conceive or project forms created by its own inventiveness, but which do not agree with the truth extant or potential in nature. The mysterium. The illusion, the Maya, is the way we see the world. Prakriti, Maya. It's not the Maya itself. That reflects back whatever we want it to look like. So if you look at it as one thing, a wave, it's a wave. If you look at the particles, it's a particle. If you look at it as destructive and meaningless and mindless and soulless and mechanical, then it can accommodate. Then he goes on to say that, look, thinking which does not start from and continue in close relation to its foundations in the physical universe must lead to falsity, and it has. In the ancient Aryan texts, like the Srimad Bhagavatam, they emphasize that, look, what we're talking about right now is known already by our ancestors. And Aryan, by the way, does not mean what most people think it means. An Aryan can be from any race. They mean the elect, the elders, the brothers of light, the servants of truth. The Aryans do not kill even the small plant unnecessarily, not to speak of cutting trees for sense gratification. Aryans do not distinguish between lower and higher grades of life. All life should be protected. All living beings have a right to live, even the trees and plants. This is the basic principle of an Aryan civilization. So an enlightened civilization. But how can the self-murdered, self-butchered, self-hating, self-sadistic man operate on that level? It's impossible. As Schopenhauer said, for animals this world is hell and men the demons who torture them. Freud spoke very emphatically about what he referred to as oceanic experiences. We just had a little aside about going to nature or even music or whatever. But the choice is yours, with the emphasis again that it's not so much the what, because you can be sitting on the beach bored as hell. It's not so much the what, it's the way. What you're really in choice of, where your choice really operates, is when you go to something, or you go to nature, or you even go and look at a wall, something ugly, some of these rotten buildings around here or whatever. That's the what. All the broken down stuff and the dilapidations and the corrosion and even rust. Whatever you happen to be looking at, your choice is the way that you look at it, the way you observe it. That's where the magic really is. It's really what animals are doing. They're doing the what, but they're also doing something quite different. They're in a different level of communication that is not rooted in what? It's not rooted in antipathy to nature. They have antipathy to us. A bird will come and sit on a horse's head, but you couldn't go within 12 feet and it's already buggered off. Now, why is that? Because they have antipathy to us because we got antipathy to nature. See how it works? Once upon a time they didn't. As Professor Tolkien and others have clearly, although in fictional terms, they knew they had to do it that way, have explained. But until we lose the antipathy to nature, you can't be doing bugger all with animals. They're too smart. They stay well away from us. They know what we are, what we're thinking. Their intelligence is still rooted into the real. Or music. Music is so key. The greatest philosophers who speak about the subjects we're discussing here have emphasized music and poetry over and over again. In fact, the greatest philosopher who spoke of these, Martin Heidegger, a German, he resigned his seat because he said that even philosophy, and this is a man who's preeminent in the subject of modern philosophy, he gave up his seat and only spoke from that point on about poetry and music because he said that philosophy is ended. Philosophy is no longer capable of going where we need it to go. And a remarkable and amazing statement. And spent the rest of his career dealing only strictly with poetry and music. Leonard Shlain puts it more succinctly. He says that the ability of species to generate and respond to music is one of the great unexplained mysteries of nature. Apparently, appreciation of music is built into the genetic foundation of all higher life forms. In humans, perfect pitch seems to be encoded somewhere within the strands of DNA. If the fittest do need to survive, then how does the ability to sing in key or keep time to rhythm complement or enhance that survival? Well, the answer is it doesn't. It's of something else. Right? It's the fragrance of the rose. And your response to it is very, very important. but it's not everybody's response to it, like this cheese ball music, the packaged crap that they want everybody to just imbibe. And that point is brought up by another philosopher, psychologist, Wilhelm Wildebond. He says that there's two forms of experience. And we said the what and the way. He makes it far more eloquent. Ideographic and nomothetic. Ideographic experience is a meaningful event or experience which cannot be replicated. So, goodbye Dawkins, goodbye Dennett, goodbye all you clinicians in white, sorry, not needed here. It won't be replicated. You can't stand on the same piece of water twice. You can't have even the same thought twice. So then there's the opposite of that, which the scientists can measure and find. I'm not arguing with that. Is nomothetic, experiences which are replicable and scientifically verifiable. They've got those experiences. But why don't they tell us that there's other experiences that they simply can't measure with their measuring instruments? One important aside, but it's so important because even from what we've been discussing, you may imbibe this fallacy. And it's the fallacy that's been almost ubiquitous throughout all of philosophy and psychology, and that is that the unconscious is actually a place. A region, a zone, right? This is something we automatically embody without thinking about it, and of course it's utter nonsense. And the point was brought out by Grodeck, who was onto this from instantly. Grodeck is the originator of this idea of way of seeing. He's most careful to insist that the it or the id is not a thing in itself, but merely a way of seeing. I think that when you fully grasp that, you have completely got the steering wheel in your hands. Because the fallacy of thinking it's a place, it's a region, it's in the back of my mind, it's over here, and we do this in the language. The language doesn't help us a lot. Unconscious, this murky realm, bottomless pit, Dante's Inferno, all of this stuff is really, in a way, lovely metaphor, but it's very, very unhelpful. Once you suddenly realize that it's just a way of seeing, you have the power. It's brought back into you because it's fully under your suzerainty at that point. And probably the greatest exponent of these ideas, and I say greatest because the most physicalist, the man who brought, let's not even use the word physicalist because I've been using it in a negative connotation, let's say materialist. It's the question you all have. What's the physical answer? What's the physical answer? Well, the man who had more to do with that physicalizing of all of this abstractia was Wilhelm Reich. He just happened to die in a federal stockade, but, let's leave that aside. Arrested for, what was it, if they don't get you on what was the famous one with Oscar Wilde, corrupting the youth, they'll get you on something likewise, They'll always dig out something you've never heard of. Healing people, wow, can't have that. Right? So, but to just a little bit get behind what Reich's teachings were, and also Alexander Lowen, his protege, is a quote from Julian Jaynes which says, "There's nothing in consciousness that is not an analog of something that was not in behavior first." Right? That's the physicalist point of view. If it's in consciousness, look, it begins with behavior. But something, they're right. They're absolutely right. The only problem that they make is that, okay, so what you're saying is that there's no thoughts in the brain isn't doing anything, those are epiphenomena of the brain's mechanical action, or they don't exist at all. And it's all part of the physical experience of life. I can only agree with that. But that physical experience is spiritual. And slowly some of these people are starting to connect with this. Right? So let's just hold that thought as we move through this. Alexander Lowen and Wilhelm Reich completely were Freudians, right? Reich was a Freudian and then parted with the school of Freud because he had some differences. And his differences were monumentally important, so much so that they probably, actually, arguably, he is the greatest mind that ever lived. As I said, they all end up the same way. And I'm not forcing you to believe that what he was saying is true. I'm just saying, if his stuff is true, then he would have to be up there. And what is he really saying? Is unbelievable in simplicity but beauty. He's saying what we've already discovered, and that is, stop thinking of ego and unconscious and conscious and superego as regions and some anatomy, some mechanical thing. It's very simple, he would say. The outer part of your body, and that's the skin and the subcutaneous fat, right? I couldn't really find good pictures, but the one on the left pretty shows you the outline of a body. The black line of the exterior of the body and maybe an inch or so, right, in the subcutaneous fat. Reich is telling you that that is the ego. And what he's really saying is that the body is the ego. But he specifically meant the surface of the body. And he is the